Chapter 1. There comes a point in life when you realize the problem is not your circumstances alone. The real battle is happening inside your mind. You wake up tired even after sleeping. You feel pressure without understanding why. You lose excitement for things that once inspired you. Slowly, negativity becomes automatic. Doubt becomes louder than belief. Fear becomes stronger than ambition. And the worst part is that nobody around you fully notices it, because externally you still appear functional. Most people think they need a completely new life to feel better. But often what they truly need is a reset in the way they think, react, and live daily. A powerful mindset is not built overnight. It is built through habits. Small habits repeated consistently until they completely transform your inner world. The first habit that changes everything is protecting your mornings. Most people destroy their peace within the first 5 minutes after waking up. The alarm rings, the phone lights up, social media floods the brain, and instantly the mind enters comparison, anxiety, pressure, and distraction. Before your own thoughts even appear, the world has already invaded your mind. That is dangerous. A chaotic morning creates a chaotic mindset. A peaceful morning creates emotional control. Imagine waking up without immediately touching your phone. Imagine sitting quietly for a few moments, drinking water slowly, breathing deeply, stretching your body, and allowing your mind to wake up naturally instead of violently. That single habit alone can change your emotional state more than people realize. Silence is powerful because silence reveals truth. Most people avoid silence because it forces them to confront themselves. Distraction has become the modern escape from self-awareness. People scroll endlessly because they are uncomfortable being alone with their own thoughts. But healing begins the moment you stop running from yourself. When your mornings become intentional, your mind becomes stronger. You stop reacting emotionally to everything around you. You begin controlling your energy instead of surrendering it. Another important truth is that confidence is built privately, long before it appears publicly. Confidence does not come from attention. It does not come from money, praise, or social media validation. Real confidence comes from self-respect. And self-respect is built when you keep promises to yourself consistently. Every time you say you will wake up early and actually do it, your mind begins trusting you. Every time you commit to reading, exercising, learning, or improving and follow through, you create psychological evidence that you are becoming disciplined. People wait for motivation before changing their lives. But motivation is unreliable. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. Your habits are constantly shaping your identity. Every positive habit whispers, "I still believe in myself." Every destructive habit whispers, "I have given up." The mind listens carefully to both. Modern life has also created another major problem: overstimulation. People consume endless entertainment, constant notifications, fast dopamine, non-stop videos, and infinite distraction every single day. Their minds never rest. That is why so many people feel emotionally exhausted even when they are doing nothing physically difficult. Your brain was never designed to absorb endless noise. You need moments where your mind can breathe again. Walk outside without headphones sometimes. Sit quietly for 10 minutes. Read slowly instead of endlessly scrolling. At first it feels uncomfortable because your brain is addicted to stimulation. But eventually, calmness becomes enjoyable again. Your environment matters too. Negative people slowly shape negative thinking. Constant criticism weakens ambition. Fear spreads through conversations. If you spend enough time around hopeless people, hopelessness eventually feels normal. That is why protecting your energy is necessary. You do not need to hate people. You simply need boundaries. The voices you hear daily eventually become the voice inside your own head. Feed your mind better thoughts. Read words that inspire discipline and growth. Listen to conversations that expand your perspective. Spend time with people who challenge your excuses instead of feeding your limitations. Your brain becomes what it repeatedly consumes. Many people are trapped not because they lack intelligence, but because they repeat the same negative thoughts every single day. The brain strengthens whatever it practices most. If you constantly say, "I am unlucky, I am behind, or I will never succeed," your brain begins searching for evidence to support those beliefs. But the opposite is also true. When you practice gratitude, resilience, discipline, and optimism consistently, your mind starts recognizing opportunities instead of obstacles. One of the strongest habits for mental clarity is journaling. Writing your thoughts down removes mental pressure. Thoughts become less overwhelming once they leave the mind and enter paper. Journaling creates emotional order inside psychological chaos. Write honestly. Write your fears. Write your frustrations. Write your dreams. Write who you want to become. Over time, you begin understanding yourself more deeply. Mindset transformation is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing the mental fog that prevented you from becoming yourself in the first place. Every day is another opportunity to reset mentally, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you become stronger internally. And once your habits begin protecting your peace instead of destroying it, your entire life starts changing quietly from the inside out. Chapter 2. The second positive habit that will completely reset your mindset is learning how to speak to yourself with power instead of destruction. Most people are carrying invisible wounds created by their own internal voice. They smile publicly while privately insulting themselves every single day. They call themselves failures after mistakes. They replay embarrassing moments for years. They compare themselves to others constantly and quietly believe they are not enough. The human mind believes what it hears repeatedly. If you spend years telling yourself that you are weak, broken, unattractive, unlucky, or incapable, eventually your brain accepts those thoughts as identity. Thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs become actions. Actions become results, and results reinforce the same identity again. This is why negative self-talk silently destroys millions of lives. A mindset reset begins when you understand one powerful truth. Your internal voice is programming your future. That does not mean pretending life is perfect. It does not mean fake positivity or ignoring reality. Real mental strength comes from disciplined self-belief. It means you acknowledge difficulty without surrendering your identity to it. You can struggle without becoming hopeless. You can fail without becoming a failure. You can feel fear without allowing fear to control your destiny. Most people wait for external validation before believing in themselves. They want applause before effort. They want recognition before discipline. They want certainty before taking risks. But confidence rarely appears before action. Confidence is built by surviving difficult moments repeatedly. Think about your own life for a moment. You have already survived things you once believed would destroy you completely. You survived confusion, disappointment, heartbreak, loneliness, rejection, stress, pressure, and uncertainty. There were nights you thought you would never recover emotionally, but you did. That alone is proof of strength. The problem is that people remember their failures more than their resilience. They replay moments of embarrassment while ignoring moments of courage. One of the strongest habits you can develop is immediately challenging negative thoughts instead of automatically believing them. When your mind says, "I cannot do this," ask yourself, is that really true? Most limitations are psychological before they become physical. The brain develops patterns through repetition. Negative thinking becomes automatic when practiced daily. But positive mental conditioning also becomes automatic through consistency. That is why successful athletes visualize victory before competition. That is why leaders mentally rehearse confidence before important moments. That is why high performers protect their mental environment carefully. They understand that performance begins psychologically. Your mind is either training you for strength or training you for weakness every single day. Many people become addicted to victimhood without realizing it. Their identity becomes completely connected to suffering. Every conversation revolves around pain, unfairness, or disappointment. Slowly, they stop seeing themselves as powerful human beings and begin seeing themselves only as victims of life. Pain is real. But you must be careful not to build your entire identity around it. Healing begins when you stop introducing yourself through your wounds. Your past matters, but it should not permanently define your future. Some of the strongest people in history were once rejected, ignored, underestimated, or humiliated. Their transformation began the moment they stopped accepting limitation as permanent truth. Another important truth is that your environment affects your self-talk deeply. If you constantly surround yourself with criticism, negativity, gossip, sarcasm, and emotional toxicity, eventually your internal voice becomes harsh too. Words carry emotional energy. The conversations you hear daily slowly shape the way you think about yourself. This is why protecting your mental environment matters so much. Listen carefully to what people repeatedly speak into your life. Some voices inspire growth. Others quietly destroy confidence. Choose wisely. A healthy mindset also requires emotional honesty. Strength is not pretending you never feel pain. Real strength is being honest about your emotions without allowing those emotions to destroy your future. There will be moments when you feel lost. There will be nights when anxiety feels overwhelming. There will be seasons when you question yourself deeply. That is part of being human. But temporary emotions should never become permanent identities. One major reason people remain mentally stuck is fear of failure. They believe mistakes define their worth. They think failure means they are not capable. So instead of risking embarrassment, they avoid growth entirely. But failure is often evidence of courage. People who never fail usually never attempt anything meaningful. A child learns to walk through repeated falling. Imagine if the child decided after the first fall, walking is not for me. Growth has always required discomfort. Why should adulthood be different? The fear of judgment also destroys countless dreams. Many people abandon their goals because they are terrified of criticism from people who are not even building anything meaningful themselves. But here is the truth. People will judge you whether you act or remain stagnant, so you might as well grow. The moment you stop measuring your worth through external approval, your mindset changes dramatically. Social media has intensified comparison culture. People compare their real lives to edited highlights from strangers online. They see someone else succeeding and immediately feel behind in life. But comparison steals peace because it distracts you from your own path. Someone else winning does not mean you are losing. Different people bloom at different times. One of the healthiest habits you can develop is celebrating progress instead of obsessing over perfection. Perfectionism often hides fear. People delay action because they are scared of making mistakes. But growth is messy. Improvement is uncomfortable. Transformation takes time. The strongest version of yourself is not hidden inside flawless performance. It is built through consistent effort. Every day you practice healthier self-talk, your mind becomes more resilient. You become less emotionally fragile. Criticism stops destroying you completely. Setbacks stop convincing you to quit. The human mind adapts to whatever it practices repeatedly. If you practice fear daily, fear becomes stronger. If you practice courage daily, courage becomes stronger. If you practice gratitude, discipline, optimism, and resilience consistently, those qualities begin shaping your identity naturally. Never underestimate how powerful one encouraging thought can become during a difficult season. Sometimes one hopeful belief is enough to keep a person moving forward when everything inside them wants to give up. Speak to yourself with strength. Speak to yourself with patience. Speak to yourself like someone worth saving. For your attention instead of allowing the world to control it for you. Most people wake up every day without realizing that their minds are under attack constantly. Notifications compete for attention. Social media competes for attention. News competes for attention. Entertainment competes for attention. Fear competes for attention. Comparison competes for attention. The modern world is built to keep human beings distracted because distracted people are easier to control emotionally. That is why so many people feel mentally exhausted even when they are not doing physically difficult work. Their minds never rest. The average person touches their phone countless times daily. They scroll while eating, scroll before sleeping, scroll immediately after waking up, scroll during conversations, and scroll during moments that once belonged to silence and reflection. The brain never gets an opportunity to breathe deeply anymore. A distracted mind slowly becomes an anxious mind. When your attention is constantly fragmented, your emotional stability weakens, your focus disappears. Your patience decreases, your creativity suffers. Your inner peace fades quietly. Most people think focus is only important for productivity. But focus is much deeper than productivity. Focus is emotional power. Whatever controls your attention eventually controls your emotions. And whatever controls your emotions eventually controls your life. Think carefully about your daily thoughts. If your attention constantly focuses on fear, your anxiety grows stronger. If your attention constantly focuses on comparison, your insecurity grows stronger. If your attention constantly focuses on negativity, your hopelessness grows stronger. But if your attention focuses on growth, gratitude, discipline, learning, and purpose, your mindset begins changing automatically. Attention is like water. Whatever you continuously water eventually grows. That is why protecting your focus is one of the most important habits for mental transformation. Most people today are overstimulated but deeply unfulfilled. They consume endless information without applying anything. They watch motivational videos for hours but never build discipline. They absorb entertainment constantly while feeling emotionally empty inside. Knowledge without action creates frustration. The brain was never designed to absorb non-stop stimulation every waking hour. Human beings need silence. They need reflection. They need moments of stillness where thoughts can settle naturally. But silence has become uncomfortable for many people. Why? Because silence forces people to confront themselves. Distraction has become an emotional escape. People stay busy because they are afraid of what they might feel if they finally slow down. They fear loneliness, regret, sadness, confusion, insecurity, and uncertainty. So they keep consuming noise to avoid hearing their own thoughts. But healing begins the moment you stop running from yourself. One of the strongest habits you can develop is intentionally creating moments without digital stimulation. Walk outside without headphones sometimes. Sit quietly for 10 minutes. Read a book slowly without checking your phone repeatedly. Eat a meal without scrolling. Allow your nervous system to relax again. At first, this feels uncomfortable because the brain becomes addicted to fast dopamine. Endless scrolling trains the mind to expect constant stimulation every few seconds. Patience weakens. Attention spans collapse. Simple moments start feeling boring because the brain has been overstimulated for too long. But eventually, your mind begins recovering. You start thinking clearly again. You start feeling calmer again. You start noticing life again. One powerful habit that strengthens attention is single tasking. Modern culture glorifies multitasking, but constant task switching damages concentration. When your mind jumps continuously between distractions, stress increases, mental fatigue increases, productivity decreases. Your brain performs best when fully focused on one thing at a time. When you listen carefully during conversations, relationships deepen. When you focus fully on work, the quality improves. When you pray, meditate, or reflect without distraction, emotional peace becomes stronger. Presence itself is healing. The problem is that most people are physically present, but mentally absent. During conversations, they think about notifications. During meals, they scroll endlessly. During family moments, they mentally replay stress. During peaceful evenings, they consume more noise instead of experiencing the moment itself. That is why life begins feeling empty. You cannot fully experience life if your attention is always divided. Many people believe they need dramatic experiences to feel happiness again. But often, what they truly need is deeper presence within ordinary moments. A sunrise feels beautiful when you actually observe it. A conversation feels meaningful when you genuinely listen. A walk feels therapeutic when your mind is not trapped inside endless stimulation. Life becomes richer when attention deepens. Another important truth is that attention shapes memory. People forget entire years emotionally because they were never fully present during them. Their minds were trapped inside distraction the entire time. Have you ever reached the end of a week and wondered where all the time disappeared? That happens because distraction steals awareness. A focused mind experiences life more deeply. One of the strongest mental exercises is observing where your attention goes daily. How many hours disappear into meaningless scrolling? How much emotional energy is wasted worrying about things beyond your control? How often do you replay painful memories repeatedly, even though the situation already ended? How many times do you compare your life to strangers online? Your focus determines your emotional reality. Whatever dominates your attention eventually dominates your emotions. That is why protecting your mental environment matters deeply. The content you consume shapes your thinking more than you realize. Your brain absorbs emotional energy from conversations, music, media, and social environments continuously. Imagine two people living in the exact same city. One spends years consuming negativity, gossip, outrage, fear, and distraction daily. The other spends years reading valuable books, learning skills, reflecting deeply, practicing discipline, and strengthening emotional awareness. After enough time, their minds become completely different worlds. Your future mindset is being built right now through daily attention. One of the greatest psychological rewards of focus is self-respect. Every time you resist distraction and complete something meaningful, your brain gains evidence that you are disciplined. And discipline creates confidence because it proves self-control. People often chase motivation while ignoring discipline completely. But motivation changes constantly. Discipline remains available even during difficult emotions. A focused mind also becomes more creative. Great ideas rarely appear during endless distraction. Creativity emerges during stillness, observation, reflection, and uninterrupted thought. Some of the greatest discoveries in human history came from quiet moments of deep concentration. Modern life has made deep thinking rare. That is why people who can focus deeply have become extremely powerful. Meditation is another habit that strengthens attention dramatically. Meditation teaches you to observe thoughts without instantly reacting to them. Most people automatically believe every thought their minds create. But thoughts are not always truth. A fearful thought is still just a thought. An insecure thought is still just a thought. An anxious thought is still just a thought. You do not need to emotionally obey every mental narrative that appears inside your mind. A disciplined mind learns observation before reaction. When anger appears, pause before speaking. When anxiety appears, breathe before assuming disaster. When insecurity appears, challenge the thought instead of surrendering instantly. This is emotional maturity. Another important truth is that where attention goes, energy follows. If you spend years focused on negativity, your energy weakens. If you spend years focused on purpose, learning, discipline, and growth, your life changes gradually from the inside outward. The quality of your attention shapes the quality of your future. That is why protecting your focus is not optional anymore. It is survival for your mental peace. The world will continue competing for your attention every single day. But a powerful mindset is built when you stop giving your best energy to things destroying your inner peace. Protect your focus carefully. Because your attention is not just mental energy, your attention is your life. Chapter 4. The fourth positive habit that will completely reset your mindset is practicing gratitude deeply and consistently, especially during the moments when life feels difficult. Most people only feel grateful when everything is going well. They appreciate life when they are succeeding, earning, winning, receiving attention, or feeling emotionally comfortable. But real gratitude becomes powerful when it survives hard seasons. Because gratitude is not pretending, pain does not exist. Gratitude is the decision to recognize that even within struggle, there are still reasons to remain hopeful, alive, and emotionally grounded. The human mind naturally focuses on what is missing. People think about delayed success, financial pressure, rejection, comparison, mistakes, insecurities, disappointments, and fears constantly. Eventually, the brain becomes trained to search for problems automatically. Negativity becomes a habit without people even realizing it. And when negativity becomes habitual, life starts feeling heavier emotionally, even when good things still exist. That is why gratitude is so powerful. Gratitude changes perception. Two people can live through similar situations while feeling completely different emotionally, because one person focuses only on what is wrong, while the other still notices what remains beautiful. Your perspective shapes your emotional reality more than your circumstances sometimes. Think about how many blessings people ignore daily simply because they became normal. The ability to breathe without struggle. The ability to walk independently. Clean water, a peaceful meal. A conversation with someone you love. Another sunrise. Another opportunity to improve your life. These things appear ordinary until they disappear. Human beings adapt quickly to comfort. Things that once felt miraculous eventually become expected. People pray desperately for opportunities, relationships, health, and peace, then later forget to appreciate them once they finally receive them. That is one reason people remain emotionally unsatisfied even after achieving goals. Their minds keep chasing what is next without appreciating what already exists. Gratitude protects the heart from emotional numbness. One of the biggest reasons modern people struggle mentally is constant comparison. Social media created an environment where human beings compare their ordinary lives to the highlights of strangers every single day. Someone always appears richer, happier, more attractive, more successful, more disciplined, or more accomplished. Comparison creates endless dissatisfaction because there will always be someone ahead of you in some category. That race never ends. The more you compare yourself constantly, the more peace disappears. Gratitude interrupts comparison. It pulls your attention back toward your own life. It reminds you that peace does not come from having everything. Peace comes from appreciating what already exists while still pursuing growth. You can remain ambitious without becoming emotionally empty. There is nothing wrong with wanting success, financial stability, achievement, or improvement. The problem begins when your happiness becomes permanently delayed until some future goal arrives. Many people unconsciously say to themselves, "I will finally be happy once I earn more money. I will finally feel peace once I become successful. I will finally appreciate life once everything becomes perfect." But perfection never arrives permanently. There will always be another goal, another pressure, another challenge. If you cannot appreciate life during the journey, success itself will not heal your emptiness. Some wealthy people remain emotionally miserable because gratitude cannot be purchased. Meanwhile, some people with simple lives radiate peace because they learned how to appreciate existence itself. A grateful mind experiences life differently. Food tastes better. Conversations feel deeper. Simple moments become meaningful. Ordinary mornings feel peaceful. The world becomes emotionally richer. Another powerful truth about gratitude is that it changes relationships. People naturally move closer to those who appreciate them sincerely. Appreciation strengthens emotional connection. Many relationships slowly die, not because love disappears completely, but because appreciation disappears. Human beings want to feel valued. Sometimes a simple "thank you" carries more emotional power than dramatic gestures. Many people silently carry heavy responsibilities without receiving appreciation from anyone around them. A few sincere words can completely change someone's emotional state. Gratitude toward yourself matters too. Most people criticize themselves constantly while ignoring their own growth completely. They focus only on mistakes while overlooking resilience. Take a moment to think about how much you already survived. You survived moments that once felt impossible emotionally. There were days you felt completely exhausted mentally, but still continued moving forward. There were seasons where life confused you deeply, but you still endured. That deserves acknowledgement. Appreciate your own resilience. Appreciate your effort. Appreciate the fact that you are still trying to become better despite everything you faced. One reason gratitude strengthens mental health is because it redirects attention away from endless dissatisfaction. The brain cannot fully experience gratitude and bitterness at the same intensity simultaneously. Gratitude softens emotional heaviness. This does not mean ignoring pain or pretending struggles do not exist. Difficult emotions are real. Hard seasons are real. Stress is real. But gratitude prevents temporary darkness from convincing you that life itself has no beauty remaining. There is always something still worth appreciating, even during painful seasons. Another important habit is learning how to notice small moments intentionally. Modern life moves quickly. People rush through days without truly experiencing them. They are physically alive but emotionally absent. Slow down enough to notice life. Notice the warmth of sunlight during morning hours. Notice laughter during conversations. Notice peaceful silence after stressful days. Notice how far you already came compared to who you once were. Presence strengthens gratitude. The reason many people struggle to feel grateful is because they are mentally trapped either in the past or future. When focused on the past, people replay regret, pain, mistakes, and old wounds repeatedly. When obsessed with the future, people constantly worry about uncertainty and fear. But gratitude exists in the present moment. You cannot appreciate life while mentally absent from it. One of the deepest forms of gratitude is understanding how limited time truly is. Life is fragile. People assume tomorrow is guaranteed, so they postpone joy, healing, connection, and purpose endlessly. But the truth is that nobody knows how much time remains. That realization changes perspective completely. Suddenly, ordinary conversations feel more valuable. Family feels more important. Peace feels more important. Love feels more important. The small moments become sacred. A grateful mindset also creates emotional resilience during uncertainty. Life will never remain perfect permanently. There will always be disappointment, confusion, setbacks, and pressure. But gratitude keeps darkness from becoming your permanent identity. It reminds you that difficult seasons are chapters, not entire stories. One beautiful thing about gratitude is that it expands naturally through practice. The more you intentionally appreciate life, the more beauty your mind begins noticing automatically. Your brain starts searching for blessings instead of problems constantly. That changes emotional chemistry. That changes perspective. That changes energy. And eventually, that changes your entire mindset. Many people spend their whole lives chasing extraordinary moments while ignoring the beauty hidden inside ordinary days. But happiness is rarely hidden inside one giant moment. Usually, it exists quietly inside small moments fully appreciated. A peaceful cup of tea, a meaningful conversation, a calm evening, a hopeful prayer, a moment of silence, a deep breath after surviving another difficult day. Gratitude transforms these ordinary moments into emotional wealth. And once your mind learns how to appreciate life deeply, peace stops feeling so distant. Most people build their lives around motivation, but motivation is unstable. It appears suddenly and disappears just as quickly. One day you feel inspired, energized, ready to change everything. The next day you feel tired, distracted, emotionally low, and disconnected from your goals. If your entire system depends on motivation, your progress will always be inconsistent. That is why so many people start strong and fail silently later. They were not lacking dreams. They were lacking discipline. Discipline is the ability to continue even when motivation disappears. This is where real transformation begins. A disciplined mind does not wait for perfect feelings. It does not wait for ideal conditions. It does not wait for emotional excitement. It moves forward because it understands that consistency matters more than mood. Your emotions are real, but they are not always reliable leaders. There will be days when your mind tells you to quit everything. There will be days when nothing feels meaningful. There will be days when exhaustion convinces you that progress is pointless. But discipline is what keeps you moving through those moments. That is the difference between people who grow and people who remain stuck. Most people underestimate how powerful small daily actions are. They think transformation must be dramatic, instant, and visible. But real change is slow, quiet, repetitive, almost invisible at first. A few pages of reading every day, a short workout session consistently, a small effort toward learning or skill building, a daily decision to avoid distraction, a repeated choice to show up even when you do not feel like it. These small actions accumulate over time and reshape identity. People do not change their lives in one moment. They change through repetition. One of the biggest illusions in modern thinking is that success comes from occasional bursts of effort. But success is built through boring consistency. Through days when nothing feels exciting, but you still do the work anyway. That is discipline. Discipline also changes how you see yourself internally. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your mind starts trusting you more. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your mind starts doubting you more. Self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Without self-trust, even external success feels unstable. With self-trust, even difficult situations feel manageable. Think about it clearly. If you decide to wake up early and actually do it repeatedly, you start building inner respect for yourself. If you say you will study, improve, exercise, or work on your goals and consistently follow through, your brain develops evidence that you are reliable. And reliability toward yourself creates deep confidence. Most people search for confidence in external validation. They want people to approve them, praise them, recognize them, or believe in them. But the strongest confidence is internal. It comes from knowing you can depend on yourself. Discipline also creates freedom, not limitation. At first, it feels like discipline restricts you because it demands effort and structure. But in reality, discipline removes chaos from your life. Without discipline, you are controlled by impulses. Impulse spending creates financial stress. Impulse eating affects health. Impulse reactions damage relationships. Impulse distraction destroys focus. But disciplined behavior creates stability in every area of life. Financial discipline leads to financial freedom. Health discipline leads to physical strength. Emotional discipline leads to mental peace. Another important truth is that discipline protects your future self. Every decision you make today is a message to the future version of you. When you choose growth, you are building a stronger future. When you choose avoidance, you are creating future struggle. Most people live as if their future self will magically handle everything. But your future self is simply you, shaped by your current habits. Discipline is how you take responsibility for your own life progression. One of the hardest parts of discipline is starting, not continuing. Starting. Because the mind resists discomfort initially. It prefers comfort, delay, and avoidance. But once action begins, resistance slowly decreases. The first step is always the hardest. After that, momentum builds. Another powerful aspect of discipline is identity transformation. When you consistently act like a disciplined person, your identity slowly changes. You stop saying, "I am lazy" or "I am inconsistent," and begin recognizing yourself as someone capable of structure and control. Identity is not fixed. It is built through behavior. You become what you repeatedly do. That is why disciplined actions matter more than temporary intentions. A single motivated day means nothing if it is not followed by consistency. But small, consistent effort over time creates real transformation. Another important truth is that discipline includes rest. Real discipline is not burnout. It is not forcing yourself into exhaustion. It is balance. It is structure. It is sustainability. A disciplined person knows when to push and when to recover. They do not rely on emotional extremes. They maintain steady effort over time. That stability is what creates long-term success. Many people quit not because they are incapable, but because they overestimate what they can do in a short time and underestimate what they can achieve through consistency. They expect fast transformation, do not see immediate results, and give up too early. But growth takes time. You plant seeds long before you see results. Another major benefit of discipline is emotional strength. When you are disciplined in your habits, your mind becomes less reactive. You stop being controlled by temporary feelings. You develop the ability to act based on long-term vision instead of short-term emotion. That emotional control changes everything. You think clearer. You decide better. You stress less. You regret less. You grow more. Discipline also protects you from destructive cycles. Many people fall into habits that feel comforting temporarily but damaging long-term. Avoidance, procrastination, addiction to distraction, and emotional escape behaviors slowly weaken confidence and self-respect. Discipline interrupts those cycles. It brings you back to control. Every disciplined action is a quiet statement that you are not controlled by your impulses anymore. One of the most powerful effects of discipline is inner pride, not arrogance, not ego, but quiet self-respect. When you know you did what you were supposed to do, even when it was difficult, something inside you becomes stronger. That feeling cannot be replaced by external validation, because it comes from within. Discipline does not make life easier immediately, but it makes you stronger permanently. And that strength is what eventually changes everything around you. Because when your habits change, your mindset changes. And when your mindset changes, your entire life begins to shift quietly but powerfully in the direction of growth. Most people build their entire lives around avoiding discomfort. They avoid difficult conversations. They avoid hard work. They avoid emotional honesty. They avoid responsibility. And they avoid situations that require patience or discipline. On the surface, this seems harmless because avoidance feels peaceful in the moment. It gives temporary relief. It protects you from stress. It creates a false sense of safety. But long-term avoidance is one of the most destructive psychological patterns a human being can develop. Because every time you avoid discomfort, you train your brain to fear it more. And the more you fear discomfort, the smaller your life becomes. A person who avoids discomfort eventually starts avoiding growth, because growth and discomfort are deeply connected. There is no meaningful progress in life that does not require some level of discomfort. Whether it is physical effort, emotional honesty, mental discipline, or social courage, every form of improvement demands that you step outside of what feels easy. This is the part most people never fully accept. They want change without discomfort. They want success without struggle. They want discipline without resistance. They want confidence without failure. But life does not operate on comfort-based rules. Growth always has a cost, and that cost is discomfort. The difference between people who transform their lives and people who remain stuck is not intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It is tolerance for discomfort. A strong mindset is not built when life is easy. It is built when life is difficult and you choose to continue anyway. Think about physical training for a moment. When someone starts exercising after a long period of inactivity, the body resists immediately. Muscles feel sore. Breathing becomes heavy. Energy drops. Everything feels uncomfortable. If that person interprets discomfort as danger, they stop. But if they understand discomfort as adaptation, they continue. And over time, the same activity that once felt painful becomes normal and eventually becomes strength. This applies to every area of life. Studying feels uncomfortable at first until knowledge grows. Discipline feels uncomfortable at first until habits form. Honesty feels uncomfortable at first until clarity appears. Consistency feels uncomfortable at first until identity changes. Your brain is not designed to make you successful. Your brain is designed to keep you safe. But safety and growth often move in opposite directions. That is why your natural instincts will always try to pull you back toward comfort. It will tell you to delay, to avoid, to relax, to escape, to quit, to choose easier paths. Not because it hates you, but because it is programmed for survival, not progress. But a powerful mindset is built when you stop obeying every comfort signal your mind produces. There is a moment in every meaningful change where resistance appears strongly. That moment is the real test, not the beginning when motivation is high, not the fantasy stage when everything feels exciting. The real test is the point where discomfort shows up, and you must decide whether to continue or retreat. Most people retreat, and then they repeat the same cycle again and again throughout life. Start something new, feel inspired, face discomfort, quit, repeat. This cycle creates stagnation disguised as activity. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in identity. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid discomfort?" you begin asking, "What kind of person do I become if I face this discomfort directly?" That question changes everything. Because now discomfort is no longer a threat. It becomes a pathway. One of the most important realizations in life is that emotional discomfort is not the same as danger. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean something is wrong. It often means something important is happening. Growth feels uncomfortable. Healing feels uncomfortable. Discipline feels uncomfortable. Change feels uncomfortable. But discomfort itself is not harmful. Avoidance of discomfort is what creates long-term harm. People who never learn to tolerate discomfort end up living extremely limited lives. They avoid risks, so they avoid opportunities. They avoid difficult conversations, so relationships remain shallow. They avoid discipline, so their future remains unstable. They avoid emotional truth, so internal confusion grows. Over time, life becomes smaller, not because possibilities disappear, but because tolerance for discomfort decreases. A strong mindset requires expanding that tolerance again. You start small. You do small things that feel slightly uncomfortable but manageable. You wake up a little earlier than usual. You complete small tasks, even when you do not feel like it. You have conversations you normally delay. You face small responsibilities directly instead of postponing them. Each time you do this, your brain learns something important. It learns that discomfort is survivable. And once your brain learns that discomfort is survivable, fear loses power. Fear only controls people who believe discomfort equals danger. But when you prove repeatedly that discomfort does not destroy you, your emotional resilience grows naturally. Another important truth is that avoiding discomfort creates anxiety. This is something most people do not understand. Avoidance does not remove fear. It increases it. When you avoid a difficult task, your mind keeps reminding you of it. When you avoid a conversation, it keeps replaying in your thoughts. When you avoid responsibility, it grows heavier mentally over time. Avoidance creates mental pressure. Action removes it. Even small action reduces internal stress more than endless thinking ever can. A simple step forward is more powerful than hours of mental resistance. This is why disciplined people often appear calmer, not because their lives are easier, but because they do not carry unresolved avoidance in their minds. They deal with things directly instead of letting them accumulate mentally. There is also a deeper psychological shift that happens when you learn to embrace discomfort. You stop being controlled by immediate emotions. Most people live reactively. If something feels hard, they stop. If something feels boring, they quit. If something feels emotionally heavy, they escape. Their life decisions are driven by momentary feelings. But feelings are temporary. A strong mindset is built when decisions are based on values instead of emotions. You do not ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" You ask, "Does this align with who I want to become?" That shift separates discipline from impulse. Another important aspect is that discomfort often hides opportunity. Most people never realize this because they turn away too quickly. The moment something feels difficult, they assume it is wrong for them. But in reality, difficulty is often the entrance point to growth, skill, and transformation. Everything valuable in life lies on the other side of discomfort. Confidence lies on the other side of awkward conversations. Success lies on the other side of consistent effort. Strength lies on the other side of physical and mental challenge. Peace lies on the other side of emotional honesty. If you always avoid discomfort, you will also avoid everything meaningful. A powerful mindset understands this relationship deeply. It does not chase comfort. It builds strength. Because strength makes future discomfort easier to handle, and life will always contain discomfort in some form. The goal is not to eliminate it. The goal is to increase your capacity to handle it without breaking internally. When your tolerance for discomfort grows, your life expands naturally. You take more risks. You learn faster. You recover quicker. You handle pressure better. You become emotionally stable even in uncertain situations. And most importantly, you stop fearing life itself. Because life stops feeling like something you must constantly avoid and starts feeling like something you are capable of facing. That is the foundation of a reset mindset. Far more than mindsets, far more than most hamvar. They think mental strength comes only from internal discipline, internal focus, or internal motivation. While internal effort matters, it is incomplete without environmental control. Your environment is constantly teaching your brain how to think, what to expect, and how to react. If you repeatedly place yourself in chaotic environments, your mind slowly adapts to chaos. If you repeatedly surround yourself with negativity, your mind begins normalizing negativity. If you stay in environments where discipline is absent, your behavior naturally becomes less structured over time. This is not theory, it is psychological conditioning. The human brain is highly adaptive. It constantly mirrors what it is exposed to. This means you are not just choosing your environment once, you are being shaped by it every single day. That is why some people struggle to change, even when they are highly motivated. They try to improve internally while remaining surrounded by external influences that pull them backward. It is like trying to walk forward while being pulled from behind. Eventually, most people lose the struggle, not because they are weak, but because their environment is stronger than their intention. A mindset reset begins when you understand a simple but powerful truth. If you do not control your environment will control you. Your environment is not just physical space. It includes people, conversations, digital content, routines, habits, noise levels, and even emotional energy in the spaces you spend most of your time. One of the strongest influences on your mindset is the people you interact with daily. Human beings are social learners. We absorb behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs from those around us without consciously realizing it. This is why environments with constant complaining often produce more complaining. Environments filled with discipline often produce disciplined individuals. Environments filled with ambition tend to produce ambition. If you repeatedly spend time with people who think small, your thinking becomes smaller without you noticing it. If you spend time with people who avoid responsibility, you begin rationalizing avoidance. If you spend time with people who chase growth, your mind slowly expands toward growth. This does not mean you must reject people harshly or isolate yourself completely. It means you must become conscious of influence. Not every environment deserves equal access to your time and attention. Another major part of environment is digital space. In the modern world, your phone is your most influential environment. It can either build your mindset or slowly destroy it depending on what you consume. If your digital environment is filled with comparison, your self-esteem weakens. If it is filled with negativity, your emotional state becomes unstable. If it is filled with distraction, your focus declines. If it is filled with learning and discipline-based content, your mindset gradually strengthens. Most people underestimate how much their attention is shaped by what they repeatedly see. But your brain does not differentiate between real life and consumed life in terms of emotional impact. Everything you consume becomes part of your internal narrative. This is why intentional filtering of content is not optional for mental growth. It is necessary. Your physical environment also plays a powerful role in shaping mindset. A cluttered space often creates a cluttered mind. A disorganized environment often reflects or reinforces internal confusion. On the other hand, a clean and structured environment can create a sense of clarity and control. This is not about perfection or aesthetics. It is about psychological signal. Your brain responds to external order by creating internal order. Even small changes in environment can shift mental state. A quiet space improves focus. A stable routine reduces anxiety. A dedicated area for work or study improves discipline. These are not minor details. They are psychological triggers. Another overlooked aspect of environment is emotional energy. Some spaces feel draining even when nothing physically negative is happening. This often comes from repeated emotional patterns in that space. Stress, arguments, frustration, or negativity can linger emotionally and influence mood even after events have passed. That is why certain environments feel heavy while others feel peaceful. Your mind reacts to emotional history stored in spaces. A powerful mindset does not ignore this. It learns to recognize when an environment is supporting growth and when it is silently draining energy. Intentional environment design is a form of self-discipline. It means choosing spaces that align with the person you are becoming, not the person you were. If you want focus, you create a focus-friendly environment. If you want discipline, you place yourself in structured surroundings. If you want peace, you reduce unnecessary chaos. If you want growth, you expose yourself to people and information that challenge your thinking. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. Small improvements in environment lead to large improvements in mindset over time because environment influences repetition, and repetition builds identity. If your environment supports good habits become easier. If your environment supports distractions, discipline becomes harder. This is why changing environment is often more effective than relying on motivation alone. At a deeper level, controlling your environment is actually about protecting your future self. Every environment either reinforces your current habits or shapes your future behavior. You cannot expect mental clarity in an environment designed for distraction. You cannot expect discipline in an environment designed for comfort without structure. You cannot expect growth in an environment that constantly pulls your attention away from it. A reset mindset understands that change is not only internal, it is also structural. It involves building a life system that supports the person you are trying to become. When your environment begins supporting your goals instead of opposing them, everything becomes easier. Not effortless, but easier. Your thoughts become clearer. Your decisions become more intentional. Your focus improves naturally. Your emotional state stabilizes more consistently. And slowly, without dramatic effort, your mindset starts shifting in the right direction. Because when your environment changes, your behavior changes. And when your behavior changes repeatedly, your identity changes. That is how transformation actually happens in real life. Chapter 9. The ninth positive habit that resets your mindset is learning how to control your reaction instead of being controlled by it. Most people do not suffer only because of what happens to them. They suffer because of how quickly and unconsciously they react to what happens. A single message, a small comment, a delay, a failure, a memory, or an unexpected situation can completely shift their emotional state for hours or even days. This is not because life is extremely powerful, but because reaction is happening without awareness. A reactive mind is a vulnerable mind. It responds instantly to everything without pause. It takes every situation personally. It interprets neutral events emotionally. It assumes meaning before understanding context. And most importantly, it gives external events full control over internal stability. This is one of the main reasons people feel mentally exhausted in modern life. They are not just experiencing problems, they are emotionally overreacting to everything at a high frequency. Over time, this creates internal instability, where peace becomes rare and emotional turbulence becomes normal. A strong mindset is not built by eliminating problems from life. Problems will always exist. Life will always present uncertainty, disappointment, delay, and challenge. The difference is not in what happens, but in how you respond. Between every event and your reaction, there is a space. Most people rush through that space unconsciously. They see something, feel something, and react immediately. But mentally strong individuals learn to expand that space even slightly. That small gap changes everything. Because in that gap lies awareness, choice, and control. When you react instantly, you are operating on impulse. When you pause even briefly, you regain power over your response. That pause allows you to interpret reality instead of being emotionally hijacked by it. One of the most important realizations in emotional development is that your first reaction is not always your best reaction. The first emotional impulse is often shaped by fear, ego, insecurity, or past experiences. It is not always rational. It is not always balanced. It is simply automatic. But you are not obligated to obey every automatic response your mind generates. For example, when someone criticizes you, the immediate reaction might be anger or defensiveness. When something goes wrong, the immediate reaction might be frustration or hopelessness. When someone ignores you, the immediate reaction might be insecurity or overthinking. These reactions feel real, but they are not always accurate reflections of reality. A trained mind learns to observe before responding. This does not mean suppressing emotions. Suppression creates internal pressure. Instead, it means acknowledging emotion without letting it immediately dictate behavior. There is a major difference between feeling something and acting on it instantly. Feelings are temporary. Actions create consequences. A powerful mindset understands this distinction deeply. Another key aspect of controlling reaction is emotional responsibility. Most people unknowingly give control of their emotions to external events. If something good happens, they feel good. If something bad happens, they feel bad. If someone treats them well, they feel valued. If someone treats them poorly, they feel worthless. This creates emotional dependency on external circumstances. But emotional stability comes from internal grounding. It means you remain centered even when external conditions fluctuate. You do not become emotionally unstable every time life shifts slightly. This does not mean ignoring emotions or becoming numb. It means becoming steady. Steadiness is a sign of maturity. One of the strongest habits you can develop is learning to slow down your internal response system. When something triggers you emotionally, instead of reacting immediately, you learn to pause, breathe, and observe. This pause creates clarity, and clarity prevents unnecessary damage. Many broken relationships, poor decisions, and emotional regrets happen not because people felt something, but because they reacted too quickly without reflection. A calm response often produces better outcomes than an emotional reaction. Another important truth is that not everything requires a response. Many situations lose power when they are not fed emotional energy. Silence is sometimes more powerful than reaction. Distance is sometimes more effective than engagement. Choosing not to react is sometimes the strongest form of control. Not every comment deserves attention. Not every situation deserves emotional investment. Not every problem needs immediate engagement. A disciplined mind chooses where to spend emotional energy carefully. This habit also protects mental health over time. Constant emotional reaction drains energy. It creates stress cycles where the mind never fully relaxes. Learning to regulate reaction reduces internal noise and increases mental clarity. When you stop reacting to everything immediately, life starts feeling less chaotic internally, even if external situations remain the same. Another important shift is recognizing that people often behave based on their own internal struggles, not your value. Many reactions from others are projections of their own emotional state. If you react emotionally to every behavior directed at you, you end up absorbing emotional states that were never yours in the first place. This creates unnecessary mental burden. A strong mindset learns emotional separation. It understands that other people's reactions often reflect their internal world, not your identity. This creates emotional freedom. Over time, controlled reaction builds emotional resilience. You stop feeling overwhelmed by small issues. You stop taking everything personally. You stop collapsing emotionally after minor setbacks. You become more stable, more thoughtful, and more grounded in your responses. This stability becomes the foundation of maturity. Because life does not become easier, but you become stronger internally. And when internal strength increases, external chaos loses power over you. A person who can control their reaction has already gained a significant level of mastery over their mindset, not because they do not feel anything, but because they are no longer ruled by everything they feel immediately. And that is where real mental transformation begins. Chapter 10. The 10th positive habit that resets your mindset is learning how to detach your self-worth from outcomes, failures, and external validation. Most people build their identity on unstable foundations. They feel valuable when they succeed, and they feel worthless when they fail. They feel confident when others approve of them, and they feel insecure when they are ignored or criticized. Their entire emotional stability depends on results, opinions, and circumstances outside their control. This creates a fragile mindset. Because anything external can change at any moment. A single failure can collapse confidence. A single rejection can damage self-image. A single negative comment can dominate thoughts for days. When self-worth is tied to outcomes, life becomes emotionally unstable by default. A powerful mindset begins when you separate who you are from what happens to you. You are not your success. You are not your failure. You are not your achievements. You are not your mistakes. You are not the opinion of others. You are the observer of all these experiences, not the experiences themselves. This shift is not just motivational thinking, it is psychological restructuring. When self-worth is dependent on outcomes, every situation becomes emotionally high stakes. You start fearing failure more intensely. You avoid risks more often. You overthink decisions. You hesitate in moments where action is needed, because your identity feels threatened by results. But when self-worth is stable internally, outcomes lose emotional control over you. You still care about results, but they no longer define your value as a person. This creates emotional freedom. One of the biggest misunderstandings in modern mindset thinking is the belief that success automatically creates confidence. In reality, success built on unstable self-worth does not last emotionally. A person may achieve something externally but still feel empty internally because their identity is still dependent on external validation. That is why some successful people still struggle with insecurity. Their achievements are real, but their internal foundation is unstable. True confidence comes from internal separation between identity and performance. Performance changes. Identity should remain stable. When you detach self-worth from outcomes, you start taking action more freely. You stop fearing failure as much. You stop over-analyzing every decision. You stop avoiding challenges just to protect your ego. Because failure stops meaning I am not enough and starts meaning I am learning. This single shift changes behavior completely. Another important aspect of this habit is learning to stop seeking constant approval. Many people unconsciously depend on validation from others to feel okay about themselves. They need likes, responses, praise, attention, or recognition to feel emotionally stable. But external validation is unpredictable. It cannot be controlled. It fluctuates constantly based on factors you cannot manage. When your emotional state depends on something unstable, your mind becomes unstable too. A strong mindset learns to validate itself internally. It does not mean you reject feedback or ignore opinions. It means you stop depending on them for emotional survival. You can appreciate praise without needing it. You can accept criticism without collapsing emotionally. You can experience silence without feeling worthless. You can be unseen without feeling insignificant. That is emotional independence. Another powerful realization is that failure is not a reflection of identity. Failure is simply feedback about process, timing, or approach. It is information, not definition. But most people turn failure into identity. They say, I failed, so I am a failure. This is where mindset becomes distorted. A disciplined thinker says, this approach failed, so I will adjust and try again. The difference is subtle but life-changing. One creates emotional collapse. The other creates growth. One stops movement. The other continues movement. When self-worth is detached from failure, resilience increases naturally. You become more willing to try new things. You become more open to learning. You become less afraid of experimentation, because nothing external can permanently define your internal value. This creates courage, and courage is the foundation of progress. Another important dimension of this habit is emotional stability during uncertainty. Life is unpredictable. Plans fail, situations change, people leave, opportunities shift. Nothing remains constant. If your self-worth depends on stability in external conditions, you will always feel unstable internally. But when your identity is independent of circumstances, you remain steady even in uncertainty. This does not remove pain or difficulty. It simply prevents emotional collapse during difficult moments. You still feel emotions, but they no longer destroy your sense of self. This is the difference between being emotionally controlled and being emotionally grounded. Over time, this habit builds quiet confidence. Not loud confidence based on comparison or attention, but stable confidence based on self-awareness. You stop proving yourself to others constantly. You stop chasing validation. You stop measuring your worth through external benchmarks alone. Instead, you focus on growth, learning, consistency, and internal alignment. Another important shift is understanding that your value as a human being is not something that increases or decreases based on performance. Your performance can improve or decline. Your skills can develop or weaken. Your results can vary. But your fundamental worth as a person is not something that fluctuates with outcomes. When this understanding becomes internalized, emotional pressure reduces significantly. You begin to operate with more clarity instead of fear. You begin to act from intention instead of insecurity. You begin to live from growth instead of validation. And slowly, your mindset becomes more stable, more grounded, and more resilient, because now your identity is no longer something fragile that can be broken by a single failure or lifted by a single success. It becomes something steady, something internal, something unshakable. And that is where real mental strength begins to form. Chapter 11. Forward thinking without overthinking, without realizing it. They make decisions based on how they feel in the moment rather than how those decisions will shape their future. If something feels difficult, they avoid it. If something feels easy, they choose it. If something provides instant relief or pleasure, they prioritize it, even if it creates long-term damage. This pattern slowly builds a life that feels unstable, unorganized, and emotionally inconsistent. Short-term thinking is comfortable in the moment, but expensive in the long run. Every major struggle in life becomes amplified when decisions are repeatedly made based on immediate emotion rather than long-term direction. Procrastination feels relieving at first, but later creates stress. Distraction feels enjoyable at first, but later creates regret. Avoidance feels safe at first, but later creates pressure. Impulse decisions feel satisfying at first, but later create consequences that must be faced eventually. This is why many people feel like their life is always catching up to them. It is not because life is unfair. It is because their present decisions are not aligned with their future needs. A strong mindset begins when you start seeing your future self as someone you are responsible for, not someone who will magically handle everything later. Your future self is not a different person. It is simply you, shaped by the decisions you are making today. Every habit you repeat, every choice you make, every small action you take is either building a stronger future or creating a weaker one. Short-term thinking says, what feels good right now? Long-term thinking says, what creates the life I want later? That difference changes everything. One of the biggest traps of short-term thinking is emotional decision-making. When people are tired, stressed, angry, or emotionally overwhelmed, they tend to make decisions that provide immediate relief rather than long-term stability. They escape discomfort instead of solving it. They delay responsibility instead of addressing it. They choose temporary comfort instead of lasting improvement. But emotions are temporary states. They are not reliable guides for long-term direction. A powerful mindset learns to separate emotional state from decision-making. It understands that just because something feels difficult now does not mean it is wrong. And just because something feels easy now does not mean it is right. Growth often feels uncomfortable in the moment, but rewarding later. Avoidance often feels comfortable in the moment, but painful later. Another important aspect of long-term thinking is delayed gratification. This is the ability to resist immediate reward in favor of greater future reward. It is one of the strongest indicators of discipline and success in any field. Most people struggle with delayed gratification because modern life is designed to provide instant satisfaction. Entertainment is instant. Food is instant. Communication is instant. Everything is optimized for immediate response. This has weakened patience in many individuals. But patience is not passive. Patience is strategic control over impulses. When you delay gratification, you are not losing pleasure, you are investing it. For example, studying instead of scrolling may feel uncomfortable in the moment, but it builds knowledge that pays off later. Exercising instead of resting may feel difficult in the moment, but it builds health that improves life later. Saving instead of spending impulsively may feel restrictive in the moment, but it builds financial freedom later. Short-term sacrifice creates long-term strength. Another important truth is that your habits are compounding whether you notice it or not. Small actions repeated daily accumulate into major outcomes over time. This is why long-term thinking is so powerful. It allows you to see beyond immediate results and understand the trajectory of your life. Most people quit too early because they judge progress based on short-term results. They expect rapid transformation, and when they do not see it, they assume nothing is working. But real change is often invisible in the beginning. A seed does not show visible growth immediately after being planted. Most of the important development happens beneath the surface first. Only later does visible change appear. Life works the same way. One of the strongest habits you can develop is trusting the process even when results are not immediate. This requires emotional maturity because it goes against natural impatience. But those who master patience eventually outperform those who chase instant results. Long-term thinking also improves emotional stability. When you are not constantly reacting to temporary feelings, your mind becomes calmer. You stop making extreme decisions based on temporary emotions. You become more consistent, more predictable, and more grounded. You stop overreacting to setbacks because you understand that one moment does not define the entire journey. Another powerful shift happens when you start thinking in terms of identity rather than isolated actions. Instead of asking, "What do I feel like doing right now?" you start asking, "What does a disciplined version of me do in this situation?" This creates internal alignment between actions and future goals. Each decision becomes a reflection of identity rather than impulse. And identity-based thinking is far stronger than motivation-based thinking, because motivation fades, identity remains. A person who thinks long-term does not panic over short-term discomfort. They understand that discomfort is temporary, but consequences are lasting. This mindset allows them to stay consistent even when results are delayed. It also reduces regret. Many regrets in life come from short-term thinking decisions made in emotional moments. Decisions that felt right instantly but created problems later. Long-term thinkers reduce regret because their decisions are guided by direction, not emotion. They ask better questions. Instead of, "What do I want right now?" they ask, "What will this lead to in the future?" Instead of, "What feels easiest?" they ask, "What builds stability?" Instead of, "What removes discomfort immediately?" they ask, "What creates growth over time?" These questions reshape behavior gradually. And over time, behavior reshapes life. Choosing long-term thinking does not mean ignoring enjoyment or living a strict, joyless life. It means understanding balance. It means choosing pleasures that do not destroy your future. It means building a life where today and tomorrow are not in conflict, but in alignment. A strong mindset understands that real satisfaction comes from building something meaningful over time, not from constantly chasing temporary relief. And when your decisions consistently support your future instead of sabotaging it, your entire life trajectory begins to change quietly but powerfully. Most people live based on how they feel. If they feel motivated, they act. If they feel tired, they stop. If they feel inspired, they move forward. If they feel discouraged, they withdraw. Their entire life becomes a reflection of emotional fluctuations instead of stable direction. But emotion is unstable by nature. It changes hourly, daily, and sometimes moment to moment. If your life depends on emotional consistency, your progress will always be inconsistent. That is why identity-based habits are so powerful. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" you begin asking, "What does the version of me I am becoming do in this situation?" This shift removes emotion from decision-making and replaces it with identity alignment. A disciplined person does not act disciplined because they feel like it. They act disciplined because that is who they have repeatedly chosen to become. Identity is not something you wait to discover. It is something you build through repetition. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. One small action may seem insignificant in isolation, but repeated actions compound into identity over time. Reading once does not make you a reader. Exercising once does not make you fit. Studying once does not make you knowledgeable. But repeated action eventually transforms behavior into identity. This is how real transformation happens. Most people try to change their identity through intention alone. They say things like, "I want to be disciplined," or "I want to be successful," or "I want to be confident." But intention without repetition does not create identity change. Identity change requires evidence. Your brain believes what you repeatedly show it. If you consistently act like someone who avoids responsibility, your brain builds that identity. If you consistently act like someone who shows up even when it is difficult, your brain builds a different identity. The repetition tells your mind what is normal for you. Over time, what once required effort becomes automatic. This is the point where transformation becomes stable. Another important part of identity building is understanding that inconsistency weakens self-perception. Every time you break your own pattern repeatedly, you reinforce the idea that you cannot rely on yourself. This creates internal doubt. But every time you follow through on your commitments, even in small ways, you strengthen self-trust. Self-trust is the foundation of a strong mindset. Without self-trust, even big achievements feel fragile. With self-trust, even small progress feels meaningful because you know you are becoming reliable to yourself. Many people underestimate the power of small, consistent actions. They think only big achievements matter. But identity is built in small moments, not dramatic ones. Waking up on time repeatedly builds discipline. Finishing tasks even when you do not feel like it builds reliability. Staying consistent with habits builds mental strength. Avoiding distractions repeatedly builds focus. Each repetition is shaping your identity silently. Another powerful truth is that identity is reinforced through environment, habits, and self-dialogue. If your environment supports discipline, identity becomes easier to maintain. If your habits support growth, identity strengthens faster. If your internal dialogue supports progress, identity becomes more stable. But if any of these areas conflict with your desired identity, internal struggle appears. For example, if you want to be disciplined but constantly live in distraction, identity becomes unstable. If you want to be focused but constantly consume chaos, identity becomes weak. If you want to be confident but constantly criticize yourself internally, identity becomes conflicted. That is why alignment is important. Your actions, environment, and thoughts must support the identity you want to build. Another key realization is that identity is not created in perfect conditions. It is created in imperfect conditions. Anyone can act disciplined when they feel good. But identity is formed when you act correctly, even when you feel uncomfortable, tired, or unmotivated. That is where real strength develops. Because consistency during difficulty is what tells your brain that this behavior is part of who you are, not just something you do occasionally. Over time, repetition reduces resistance. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once required effort becomes automatic. What once required motivation becomes identity-driven behavior. This is the point where mindset truly resets, not through inspiration, but through repetition. Not through emotion, but through consistency. Not through temporary motivation, but through identity formation. Another important aspect of identity building is patience. Most people expect immediate transformation. They want to change who they are quickly. But identity is built slowly through accumulated evidence over time. Every day you repeat a behavior, you are slowly rewriting your internal narrative. Even if progress feels invisible, it is still happening. The brain is constantly updating its understanding of who you are based on what you repeatedly do. This is why quitting too early prevents identity change. People give up before repetition has enough time to reshape perception. But those who continue, even through slow progress, eventually experience a shift where discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. At that stage, you no longer force yourself to act a certain way. You naturally behave in alignment with your habits. That is true mindset transformation, not temporary motivation, not emotional spikes, but stable identity. When identity changes, everything else becomes easier. Decisions become clearer. Habits become more stable. Focus becomes stronger. Emotional control improves naturally, because you are no longer trying to act differently. You are simply acting according to who you have become. And once identity is established through consistency, the mindset reset is complete. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you become stable within yourself. And that internal stability becomes the foundation for everything else you will build in life.